Hey, what's going on? It's Matt Polis, and it's time for another episode of Meat Sauce for Tuesday, January the 5th, 2021. This is episode number 11. What's going on? How are you? Happy New Year. Feels so good to be in a new year. I mean, don't get me wrong, all of our problems are still here, but at least it's 2020. At least 2020 is in the past. We're able to move forward. We can only go up from here, right? I'm going to jump right into sports today because I have a little treat for you later this week, and I don't want you to get too sick of listening to my voice. Foreshadowing. First off here, before we talk about those sports, actually, I have a little something for you. O-H-I-O. O-H-I-O. All right. Congratulations to the Ohio State Buckeyes on winning the Sugar Bowl against Dabo Swinney and those Clemson Tigers. I'll tell you, it was, I think as a football fan, that should have been a fun game to watch. As a Buckeye fan, holy cow, man. It was so fun. They were clicking on all cylinders, they being the Buckeyes. Justin Fields was unbelievable. Gets drilled in the first half, right in the back, right in the ribs. Sits out for one play, comes back in, throws a touchdown pass to Chris Olave, and then, I mean, that was the narrative for the rest of the game was, how he was doing and how he was still able to somehow be as dominant as he was. So that was unreal. Trey Sermon, like, what the heck has happened to him? He's gotten so much better. I saw somebody say, they were like, when did Trey Sermon become Ezekiel Elliott? And I was like, yeah, I could see that. Sounds good to me. College Ezekiel, not cowboy Zeke. But Trey Sermon was great. Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, fantastic. Those guys on the outside are just... And the tight ends, got to give a shout out to the tight ends. They had a huge game. Huge game. I don't think Clemson really expected the tight ends because Ohio State's kind of known for not really throwing to their tight ends, but they definitely did at the Sugar Bowl. Shout out to the defense as well. The defense stepped up, made plays when they needed to. The secondary gave up some bigger plays, but the linebackers and defensive line, they were able to bring a good amount of pressure, honestly, for a large amount of the game, and it's something I don't think Trevor Lawrence has really seen this year or maybe ever. Ryan Day, shout out to him too. He called a great game. I was really wanting him just to continue to run up the score. For those that don't know, Dabo Swinney has been hating on the Buckeyes really all season, but especially once they were announced that they got into the college football playoff. He's basically been saying that they don't deserve to be there. They've only played 6 games. He ranked them 11th in his final AP coaches poll. I personally think he just didn't really want to play them. It was great to see his halftime interview, and you could tell he was already starting to eat his own words, saying things like they're admitting that they're getting dominated. I loved it. But I still can't believe Justin Fields, 6 touchdown passes, and I mentioned before, got drilled in the ribs, clearly in pain, like wincing at every moment, can't even really walk. And then, manages to stay in the game after missing one play, throws a touchdown, and then just continues on. It's such a gutsy performance. Unreal. So kudos to Ohio State. I think, so the other game was Alabama, Notre Dame. Alabama rolled over Notre Dame. So the national championship is Monday, January the 11th. And honestly, I think if Ohio State plays like they did against Clemson, they can definitely beat Alabama. I think they can even beat Alabama if they play slightly worse than that. Not much worse, but just a little bit worse. because I think they just outperformed that game. I hope that's not it. I hope they have more. I think they might, but in reality, I'm trying to be a realist here. They played out of their minds. Hopefully, that's just hopefully that's just what this season was supposed to be. But with all the COVID, we've had so many people out. We're all back just about 100%. So maybe that's the sign of what this team really was going to be. And then we'll see that against Alabama. But no doubt in my mind, if they play like that, I think they can beat Bama for sure. Moving on to the NFL, I've seen, you've probably seen it too, but I've seen rumors of Urban Meyer potentially being named the Jaguars head coach, which would be kind of unreal because he left college football, he left coaching because of health reasons. And, I mean, his last season at Ohio State, he would visibly be on the sideline, like not able to even like stand sometimes because of his headaches or migraines or whatever he had and the stress of it all. So I can't imagine, I just don't know, going to the NFL, is that less stressful? I mean, I can't imagine so at all. But maybe after a couple years off here, he's been able to clear his mind, get healthy, and maybe he's able to handle it. I'm not sure, but he was at the game. He was at the Sugar Bowl, clearly just very stoic, just staring at the field. So my guess is if he is the Jaguars coach, he's at that game to decide, does he take Trevor Lawrence or does he take Justin Fields? Everyone's saying Trevor Lawrence is the number one, no doubt, even after that game. And honestly, up until that game, I was like, oh yeah, Trevor Lawrence for sure. But now you have to raise the question. I think the question has to be raised. Justin Fields clearly outplayed him. Clearly. And it's not just a bad Clemson defense or whatever. Like, that was the Justin Fields I think we all expected from the get-go when he transferred from Georgia. He looked like the real deal during that game. Arm strength, speed, agility, size. I mean, I think he has all of the tangibles that you want. He's not as fast as Lamar Jackson, but he throws way better than Lamar Jackson. So, and clearly the heart of a lion, the toughness of a lion to stay in that game. So I'll be interested to see. I think it will really depend. If he comes out and plays like that against Alabama, then you have to kind of start to wonder, do the Jags do something there with that number one pick to either take Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence, or does somebody try to move up? I'm not sure. I don't think Jacksonville's going to trade out of that spot, though. I think they'd be silly to trade out of that spot. All right, and then the NFL, shout out to my Cleveland Browns. For the first time since 2002, they have made the NFL playoffs. I was 12 years old the last time they did it. 12 years old. I remember where I was, too. It's pretty sad when you can remember where you were for the last Browns playoff game in 2002. I was at Cat's Bar in Kettering, Ohio with my parents. I think my grandpa was there, too. They played the Steelers, but that tells you how long it's been that I can remember all the way back to 2002 and where I was. Unfortunately, this year, too, they're going to have to also play the Steelers, which, like I said, they played them back in 2002. But it's just a great feeling to have your team in the playoffs. That organization has been through so much. The fan base has been through so much. When the team left in 1995 and went to Baltimore, we were obviously without a team for 4 years. I remember I was a Lions fan, I was a Packers fan, I loved Barry Sanders. And then the Browns came back in 1999, and it's just been a roller coaster the entire time. So this feels really good. I think they have a shot against Pittsburgh. I know this past Sunday that they played, they didn't look great the entire game against a lot of like Pittsburgh's second string. But I think you also have to realize, the Browns last week only practiced one day on the field. They were on Zoom the rest of the time. And I think maybe it was one day, maybe 1 hour of another day. But then they were on Zoom the rest of the time because the facility was closed for COVID. So not a lot of practice time to get ready for the game. So I don't care who you are. You need, again, athletes are a creature of habit. So if you don't practice all week, even going against second stringers, it's still, you're going to be a little rusty, So the secondary is also depleted. I mean, you had Chase Claypool, one of the great young wide receivers in the game this year, up against a guy who's never played in the NFL until that game. So until they moved Terrence Mitchell over to cover him because the other guy was struggling, So if Denzel Ward's able to be back this week, I think that it's going to help so much. It's not going to solve all of our problems, but having that lockdown corner on the on the outside there will really help, either against Deontay Johnson or Chase Claypool. So, I mean, the only things that Pittsburgh was doing on Sunday with Mason Rudolph was just throwing the deep ball, and they were just throwing it up, and those guys were going and getting it, and our corners weren't able to stop them. That was really all they were doing. It's not like they ran down our throats. It's not like all that. I wish our offense looked a little sharper, but I'll chalk that up to not having the wide receivers against the Jets, not being able to practice the week leading up to this game. So hopefully they, with a whole week of practice, a whole week of understanding what they did wrong against the Steelers, being able to go up against them again, that scares me. I think it's hard to beat a team 2 times in a row, like back-to-back like that. It almost makes me wonder, and I'm no conspiracy theorist, but Mike Tomlin is a great head coach, and I just have to wonder, did he go into this week doing all the math and saying, okay, Buffalo's going to beat Miami, the Ravens are going to beat the Bengals. If we lose to the Browns, we're going to end up playing the Browns in the playoffs, and I'd rather play the Browns the first round. I don't think he's thinking that, but man, when you think about it like that, he gave up the 2 seed so that he could play the Browns. I feel like he could have gone through that whole scenario and figured out, okay, it's best to rest these guys. It's best to keep TJ Watt at home, Big Ben at home, and play for the next week. So we get we get to play the Browns and see what they do, then have a whole week of preparation, then come back with our starters. I don't know. I don't know if he would do that or not, but it wouldn't surprise me, honestly. But, Kevin Stefanski also pretty much came out and said that he was limiting Nick Chubb's carries throughout the game to save his legs, so, and I noticed that too. Like, he had his big 47-yard run, I think, in the first quarter. And then the next drive, he was not out there at all. And then even throughout the game, he was very limited. So I was even questioning that a little bit. So I look for a big game for Chubb next Sunday. Hopefully he gets the carries he needs. I mean, he needs 25, 30 carries. Like, I love Kareem Hunt, but Kareem Hunt is more effective when you use Nick Chubb more, I feel like. Because they're so different in how they run that if you only see a little bit of Nick Chubb, you're used to Kareem Hunt. But if you see a ton of Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt kind of comes out of nowhere, catches you off guard a bit. So I want to see more of Nick Chubb for sure. And then Baker has to be better than he was this past Sunday. He wasn't awful, but I don't know. At one point he was 7 for 16 in passing, I think, in that first half, somewhere around there. But he's got to have a game like he did against the Bengals earlier in the season, the game that Odell got hurt. He's got to have a game like that, or he has to have a game like he did against the Ravens on Monday Night Football just a few weeks ago. If he does that, I think they have a shot. I think they have a real shot. So the defense has to step up. I mean, now we have Olivier Vernon out with a ruptured Achilles, so that definitely hurts. Adrian Claiborne and Porter Gustin, they're going to have to step up. And I know Miles still doesn't seem at 100%. He's still not quite where he was before he tested positive for COVID. So hopefully he's able to be effective. So we will have to see what happens. But either way, even if they lose, I'm just thrilled that they made it in. This year was a complete success. You can't think of it any other way. They found their coach, finally. First-year head coach with 11 wins. How many Browns teams can we say that happened? I mean, we've had a lot of coaches, and we've had a lot of quarterbacks, but it finally feels like those two things may be set in place. Baker I think he's turning the corner. Potentially could be a top 5 QB in the league for a long time. I think just this year with his attitude and his remarks towards the media, he was way more humble, way more time to work, way less talking crap. So I was happy to see that. So I think it's no secret. You have to have consistency at the head coaching position and the quarterback position. And I think maybe for the first time since 99, we might have the most potential consistency. And that's huge. So this year is a complete success. 11-5. You can't be mad at that. Still a really young team. Super young team. So it's exciting. I'm so happy for the fans, my fellow fans of Cleveland, the city of Cleveland. It's a really, really long time coming. All right, moving on to my wild card weekend playoff predictions. First up, we've got the Colts versus the Bills. I think the Bills win. I think they're so talented at every phase of the game, and they're really just clicking on all cylinders. I mean, they scored 55, 56 points against a good Miami team. So Josh Allen's having a heck of a year. Stephon Diggs with him is dangerous, and the defense is so good. And, congrats to Bills fans, too. I know you guys have kind of been in and out of the playoffs there the last couple of years, but it looks like you guys have a legit shot at doing what you want. So congrats to you guys. You deserve it just as much as Browns fans. We've both fan bases have been through some serious crap throughout the the last few decades. So kudos to you guys. Let's see, Rams versus the Seahawks. I think Seattle wins because of Russell Wilson. The Rams are without Jared Goff. He had season-ending thumb surgery, I believe. So I think with Seattle having Russell Wilson, I think there's going to be some sort of late game heroic play or drive to finish that game out. I think the Rams make it close because their defense is so good, but I think in the end, I think Russell Wilson is the guy who wins that game for them. That's my prediction anyways. And then you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Washington football team. I think the Bucs win. But Washington's defense puts up a strong fight. That front four with Chase Young there is really tough. So I'm interested to see how Tom Brady does with that. But I just think there's too much offense on the Bucs, on the Buccaneer side of the ball. That Washington isn't going to be able to keep up offensively. If they're going point for point against one another, I think Tampa Bay beats them 9 times out of 10. And then let's see, Ravens versus the Titans. I think the Ravens win this and get their revenge on Tennessee. They lost last year in the playoffs. They lost this year in the regular season. But I think the Ravens are unfortunately catching fire right at the right time. That offense is really clicking. Lamar Jackson is healthy and back. The running backs, J.K. Dobbins had a great rookie year. They're doing enough on offense to score a lot of points, and their defense is always good. Even with any injuries they have, they're still good. And the Titans defense just isn't good this year. They were really good last year, but they're just not the same this year. So I think the Ravens win that game. Even with, King Henry on the other side of the ball, I just don't see the Titans being able to outscore the Ravens. And then you have the Bears versus the Saints. I think the Saints win that one. I think they're too much for the Bears to handle. The Saints have too many ways to beat you, with whether that's Drew Brees or Taysom Hill. Although I do know Alvin Kamara tested positive for COVID leading into this last week 17. So I don't know what that does moving forward to the game coming up this weekend. It's the same actually as Denzel Ward, because Denzel Ward tested positive before this week as well, this past week. And so that's questionable whether he's going to be able to be cleared or not. So I think Alvin Kamara is in the same boat. If the Saints don't have Alvin Kamara, I think they still win. Obviously, he's a huge part of that offense. But if you've got Michael Thomas back, if you've got Emmanuel Sanders, you got all those guys plus Drew Brees and Taysom Hill, and that defense is really good. Finally for them, that was like their one weak spot was the defense, and they seem to have gotten a lot better on that side of the ball. So I think the Saints win that. I will give a shout out to the Bears, though, because several weeks here I've called them the most boring offense in the league. And they turned it on, putting in Mitchell Trubisky. I mean, they definitely started scoring points. They started moving the ball. A little more exciting. So I hope it's a good game, but I think the Saints come out on top. And then lastly, you've got the Browns versus the Steelers, Sunday Night Football. Of course, I'm going to go with the Browns. I think they shock the world and come away with a win. But the defense has to step up, and Baker has to have a clean game. And they can do it. I think they can definitely do it. If they look like they did against the Ravens on that Monday Night Football game, if they look like they did against the Titans, I mean, they can do it for sure. All right, those are my predictions for this upcoming wildcard weekend. It's going to be a great weekend of football. You've got 3 games on Saturday, 3 games on Sunday, and I think they're all going to be fantastic. So I think that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for joining me. Please remember to subscribe and share the show on social media. I'm excited to see what 2021 has in store for this podcast, and I'm really thankful that you are coming along for the ride. So I hope you have a great start to the new year, and I will talk to you next week. Bye, everybody.